Also, my internet has been fairly spotty today, so if I drop off, Leah will take over if it's my
Mhm.
session. Um, and hopefully, I might have to switch to video off if that happens, but know that I'm definitely still here. Uh, okay, so usually what we'll do is we'll start off each class with sort of like a group session or breakout rooms where people can sort of share their homework from the week prior. So that's probably what we'll do here. I'm going to just share my screen real quick and we can talk about some of the questions or things we would like folks to discuss. Um, so first off, here's the schedule for today. So we'll do breakout and we'll do a lecture, and then we'll talk a little bit more about Colab, which hopefully you watched the homework from the previous week about Colab, and we'll do a little bit of review and you'll have time for questions. And then we'll just spend most of the rest of class looking at Colab notebooks. One thing I do want to mention before we jump into the breakout rooms is we've alluded probably to these in various places, both in our co-working sessions, but also in class. All of our classes do get recorded and they go up on YouTube pretty much after the class is over. So what that means is um, you may hear us mention like, oh, go watch this class or go watch this video. Um, Obviously, those are meant as sort of an optional and additional material if you're really interested in a topic. The hope is that everything you learn in this class like is enough for you. But we know everyone has different interests and different levels of. I want to dive really deep into Colab, or I want to dive really deep in Runway. So there are links to these classes as well. Um, I believe the Runway class is a 4 or 5 week course, and it probably covers about in this course we'll probably cover about 30%, 40% of what we cover in this material, and then Colab is probably similar. We'll probably cover about half the material here in this class, and if you're interested in diving a little bit deeper, understanding some other things, this class is here. I think that's a 4 week class. Um, and next week, when we start talking about data sets and other things, we also have some data set courses and a lot of data set materials. Data sets is like a very broad topic that everyone will have sort of their own unique issues or their own unique things they need to solve, and we'll have a bunch of material for that as well. And so most of the classes will cover the basics or like what we think everyone needs to know just to be able to make a data set, but everyone will have their own individual solutions that they'll need to solve for. Cool. So those are linked. We'll make sure they get linked to in the class site as well if you don't find them here in the slides. So we are going to do breakout groups. We will just have homework discussions. So I know it was really great to see people already drop some notes in Slack. That was really helpful to sort of see everyone's work. Um, you don't have to drop your work in Slack every week, but if you want to, that's really helpful. And basically, we'll try to do like these breakout groups before every class, unless we have a really like long class that we need to cover. So Leah, are you gonna handle breakout groups? Should I? What do you want to do here?
I need to be a co-host in order to order breakout rooms.
Cool.
Um,
Let me do that really quick
cool.
for you while I go through what we should
Okay.
talk about. Cool.
Got it.
Thanks.
Gotcha.
Um, yeah. So I think there are already some great questions about like how does this model actually work, or like what's going on here, or what is this trained on? So when we do the breakout groups, I think it'd be really great if everyone could share just what they're working on or like what they tried. Some of you will have tried the same thing, and you might have like tips for each other, and then other folks will have tried things that no one else has tried, and maybe after class you want to check those out. Um, but yeah, so we'll get started with that. So questions: what made sense? What didn't? What did you like about this process? What didn't you like? And then especially what was annoying. We'll get started with some breakout groups, and then we'll meet back again in about 10 minutes, and we'll catch up and see if there were overarching questions across all the groups that Leah and I can answer.
Yep. Okay, breakout rooms. You guys will be sent to a room of about 3 or 4 people. So creating those now. I realized I forgot to set a timer, but I'll just broadcast out to them like maybe a minute before when we're closing them. Ah, you're muted.
Can we send Jordan to Amander's group?
Yes. Where is? Yeah, good point. I'll keep that in mind in the future.
Oh, okay, yeah. And
Yeah.
actually, Jordan just mentioned that captions won't be in the breakout room. So, um,
I
okay,
see.
so we'll have to solve for that. And then if we can
Mm-hmm.
just maybe we can move. Why don't we move Steven to Dakota and Mackenzie's room since Maylee has to leave.
Ah, okay. Oh wait. Oh, I see. But then
Oh, I didn't even see that.
Ugasa will be
Move him over. Move
like.
him to four as well. Sorry, this is yeah. We'll have
I'll
to
move.
talk about.
I'll move Ugasa to 3
That sounds great.
people.
And then in terms of time, um, do you just want to send
Yeah.
out a warning at like 7:48 or something?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna join some of these rooms just to hear what people are talking about, and then
Mm-hmm.
I'll come back by the time we're ready to set up.
That sounds good. Yeah, I'll do the same.
All right, thanks.
And we're back.
We're the first ones. There's everyone.
Is that everybody? No, we're still waiting on about 4 people to trickle back.
Room two has had a lot to discuss. I was there watching it.
Nice. Cool. Looks like that's everybody.
Yeah, hi everybody. So I'm gonna keep my video off because it is getting a little sketchy on my end for the moment. See if it comes back and is better. So does anyone want to speak on behalf of their group and maybe highlight any or they ran into as a group? Silence. Did anyone make anything fun that they want to share?
I don't know about the fun or something, but I can say, yeah, I posted the video of a style gun too. So where it is generating different kind of faces from a different one. So I think that's for me. What I want to do is just write down my own algorithm for with the Voronoi, and use that sample kind of photographs of human, which are not real, maybe, but still it can actually generate different kind of a algorithm over there and generate different kind of a model. So I think I'm going to use StyleGAN to try to custom train with a certain kind of Voronoi images and try to make something out of it. But yeah, that's the first step. So I'm going closer to my vision.
Very cool.
One thing that like I mentioned that I found slightly annoying compared to your model, Derek, was that like a lot of things that I thought would let me project into it expected a vector, whereas like the way that you made faces to flowers work, it like accepts in images in like particular images as input, which like really lets you play with it a lot more. Whereas like the ones like, you know, like I brought up in particular, like the pizza one, I was like, it would be really great to project a face into the pizzas and be able to like start with an image and have that, and like it expects a vector, which is like not as intuitive to play with.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because Leah is actually going to show how you can do that today in Colab. So, um, yeah, so one of the things that we'll talk about a lot over the next couple weeks is inputs and outputs. Every model it has like a very defined input. And as you noticed, a lot of the style GAN or big GAN models have an input a vector. There are ways to input images into those things. Dakota, you already know this, called projection. The problem with projection is that it's kind of slow. So Runway doesn't really support it for a lot of their models because of that issue. So we'll look at how to do it in Colab. As we talk about Colab, and maybe you've already learned this from our video, is Colab's a lot more affordable, meaning we can spend a little bit more time messing around in it without feeling like we're on the clock losing 5 cents every minute. So with that in mind, like it's going to be a little bit helpful for us to play in there. But on the downside, there's no nice GUI for it, and we'll have to find a lot of these models and play with them that way. So yeah, but I think it's helpful to point out that like image inputs feel different than vector inputs, and thinking about those is helpful for us to think about if we want to make GUIs or other models that other people can play with.
That's cool. I also wanted to share that I had some fun training a StyleGAN 2 ADA model with a few thousand images that I was able to scrape. I'm trying to get it to generate abstract art, and I was actually pretty impressed by the results. Yeah, I also did some things with super resolution using gigapixel and played around with like the walks and stuff. I don't know if I'm probably getting ahead, so yeah, I feel like you're probably gonna get to that stuff eventually. So yeah, but it's been pretty fun. I've mostly used Colab, and I played around with Runway too. Still getting the hang of just like exploring latent space with you know with the scripts that are available. I don't know. Possibly a UI too would be super helpful with like just exploring sort of the neural net and seeing what's available within it.
Yeah, I know you're definitely ahead. You're definitely ahead of the class, but I think we'll come back to that in a couple weeks, and I think we'll look at a lot of this. And um, so the trajectory for a lot of this class is we're going to play with various pre-trained models last week and this week. So this week we'll look at doing that in Colab and just get to comfortable with the tools, because Colab can feel very different than Runway. And then we'll definitely, Ibrahim's already training models. We'll do some training. We'll build a data set and then we'll do some training. And then after that, we'll be playing with a lot of these latent space tools and things. So hopefully everyone will get the full experience and learn all the various pieces. And I think it'll be a lot of fun. And we're baby steps into everything, which I know a lot of you will be ready to jump in immediately. And you're welcome to if you want. Yeah. And Ibrahim also mentioned Gigapixel, which I know came up in both co-working sessions. So everyone wants to know how to print this work. You will be looking at super resolution models. That's probably like the key. Almost all these models have a resolution of less than 1024 by 1024, and that's not really printable. So most people use super resolution, which reses up the images in various formats and ways, and we'll have to look at how what works well and what doesn't. My general recommendation is to look at Gigapixel. I tend to find it has the best quality, but it's also $100. I have a discount if you're interested, but it's an investment in price. So there are other super resolution models in Runway as well as in Colab. So if you want to start by playing with those and then see if you are committed to that life, and then try that stuff out from there.
That's cool. I mean, just a quick question relating to that. Does Gigapixel have some sort of I don't know, terminal program that I can run remotely on a server rather than like on my computer? Because I mean, because it's AI, so it's really intensive.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think that they do, although that would be a good thing to look into. I'm sure they might have some sort of server solution, but yeah, today it's just an API through their GUI, so I don't know what the other solutions would be, but that's something we can look into. Any other questions within Runway? So basically we're going to put Runway aside for a couple weeks. You're more than welcome to keep playing with it. We'll come back to it when we look at training, because you can train either in Runway or in Colab. So we will come back to it, but for now we're going to switch over to Colab. So any last questions?
I guess one thing that came up for me was I was really trying to go for the like inputting models into models, and it's a feature that I don't see usually in like Colab or if you're running your own things. But then exporting those things out of Runway also seemed like that it's not intuitive. Yeah, so basically just bringing that up. And Runway did crash a few times while playing with putting models into models. But then even when I got it working, I would just have to screen record.
Yeah, I've found sort of similar issues with Runway. The model exporter or the exporting images out of a model used to be a little bit cleaner with chain models and doing it in bulk, and now it's a lot harder. I think some of that's just like they've moved to a place where they try to do stuff that is more the broader use case, and some of the chaining stuff is edge case. Not everyone plays with it as much, but to your point, it's a cool feature that no one else does. It's really hard to chain models in Colab, actually. Lots of people have asked me to do it, and it's like very frustrating to do. So it is one of those things that if you can pull it off in Colab, it's really, or sorry, in Runway, it's very nice. Yeah. And if you don't know what we're talking about, chaining is essentially the idea that you can have multiple models in one workspace, and you can go from one model to another model to another model to another model, and then export out that final image. If you're really interested in maybe conceptually doing that, there's definitely some material on how to do that in that full Runway course we have. I even do like some feedback loop stuff where stuff loops back in on itself, which is cool, but also like kind of precarious. It does break a lot, or like it will crash Runway sometimes. So
Is this basically taking the output from one model and using it as the input of another model, or is it just like
yeah, yeah,
okay,
exactly that. Yeah, yeah. And like the nice thing about Runway is you can do, I believe you can have up to 5 models on at one time. And as Moises mentioned, it does cost more money as well. But it's pretty hard to do that actually without setting up a lot of server infrastructure outside of Runway. So if that's something you really want to explore, I would definitely recommend checking it out in Runway first to see how it works. All right, everyone's quiet. That's fine. Questions are also great for co-working sessions. So if you don't want to speak up now, you're more than welcome to join us for a co-working session and we can answer questions there. So I think at this point, we're ready to move on to Colab.
Derek, I was wondering, would it be easier on you if I share the slides?
Yeah, if you want to, that would work.
Okay, cool. Just because of your internet connection.
So did everyone get to watch the video that was the homework assignment? Okay, cool. So we'll quickly review just like the high level stuff from that, but hopefully the longer version helped people sort of understand what Colab is. I find that the switch from Runway to Colab is very jarring for most people, and I'm totally aware of that. It can kind of feel like you're immediately jumping 10 levels because now all of a sudden there's code and things you have to run and that sort of thing. So part of this week's homework is just to like get comfortable with that interface, because it can feel pretty frustrating to artists who are not used to running things in the command line or running server type of stuff. So we'll point out some notebooks that if you're not ready for the expanded version, we'll point out some of the easier notebooks to use. But yeah, the whole point of the first couple weeks here is just to get familiar with the tools, and then we'll start to really dive into using them.
Right. Yeah. Thanks, Derek. So yeah, just doing a quick little review of the video. So Google Colab is from Google. It allows, like, the cool thing about Google Colab is you have access to Google's GPUs, which means you don't have to go and buy your own for several $1,000s. The structure of a Colab notebook is very similar to a Jupyter notebook. If you used a Jupyter notebook before, essentially it's like you have cells and you run things cell by cell. One Colab file is called a notebook, and as we mentioned, there's a really nice free version, which is an advantage over Runway. And yeah, there are text and code cells, which we'll demo in a little bit. The nice thing about it being on a remote Google GPU is that the dependencies are all included, so you don't have to deal with like installing TensorFlow or a lot of different libraries. Like Google Colab, like Google knows that you're probably using this for machine learning, and so it comes pre-installed with a lot of things. So you don't have to go through the very often hairy process of installing dependencies and making sure they're all lined up. Something else that is also really advantageous of Colab is that they're web URLs, so you can like make some code and then really quickly send it to somebody. You don't have to make like a GitHub repo or anything. And yeah, the cons of Colab are that there are time limits. With the free version, the time limits are about 8 hours. And then if you have Colab Pro, which all of you will encourage you guys to get for training, it extends the time limit to about 24 hours. And there are some GPU and CPU limits. there are particular memory limits you might run into them, but yeah, you often won't be hitting those. And yeah, it is coming from Google, so yeah, think about your relationship with Google as a company and if you want to be using their tools. Yeah, and as we mentioned, there's Colab Pro, a paid version of Colab. It's $10 a month. You do need a US payments account to use it. And you do get a higher time limit before it spins you out and you time out. And you do have a higher chance of getting a better GPU. So things will train faster and things will run faster.
Yeah, one note about the Colab, the US and Canada pricing thing. You really only need a US zip code. So if anyone wants to maybe violate some terms of service but isn't in the US or Canada, I can tell you what zip code to use. You know, it's you're not going to get in trouble, but I am aware that it's like probably a slight violation of terms of service. So if they were to somehow find out or like decide to kick you off, they could use that as a reason to kick you off Colab Pro. I've never heard it happening, but it should be accessible to anyone with just like the right. You basically need a credit card and a US or Canadian zip code. So yeah, if anyone's interested or like needs that, let me know and we can walk you through that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and between, I think we have a chat message. Maybe make another Google account instead of your main one if you use Google services. Yeah, that is an option that you can do. Cool.
Yeah, another little tip there is if you want multiple GPUs, like you can have multiple Google Colab Pro accounts. I have about 3 now because I'm constantly like demoing different things in different environments. So we'll talk like as we get more through this, you'll learn a little bit how Colab works. You technically can run multiple notebooks on a single account, but it gets kind of messy depending on what you're doing. But yeah, I would say if you are worried about violating some Google service terms of service things, you might want to set up a dummy account just to protect yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all good points. Yeah, and so between Colab and Runway, since you all have used Runway before, Colab is overall cheaper. It's like if you're paying for a Pro, it's only $10 a month, and you're not charged like per usage or how many minutes you run it on. It's just flat $10 a month. It is more flexible, so you can use audio and video inputs, whereas in Runway, they haven't yet supported any models that take audio as an input, for example. And because it is a coding environment, you do have more control. Often people will use Runway and then sort of graduate onto Google Colab because they have all these things that they want to do, but they can't within Runway. The downsides of Colab versus Runway is that there is no GUI, which will make it a little harder to start up, but overall it will be more powerful. And because it is also a coding environment, you'll need to debug and be able to, or sort of like read error messages and like, be able to like read them and figure out like, and try to figure out what is going on here. Yeah, any questions about Colab?
So I think what might be good is let's take a break now. If you do have questions, come back to us with them. And then also, I bet everyone will have questions as we actually walk through some notebooks. So the plan is after our break, I'll demo just a basic intro notebook, and then Leah will show us a notebook that we've crafted for this course. So you'll get a lot of notebook experience pretty quickly. But yeah, so come back with questions. So let's do 15 minutes. We'll come back at 25 after. So we'll see everyone in 15 minutes, okay?
See you soon.
Going to Colab, is it like opening a new account or something, or from the GitHub? I missed that part.
Oh yeah, of course. No. So if you have Google, you can just go to colab.research.google,
Uh-huh.
and it'll basically just use one of your Google accounts to connect. If you haven't signed up for Colab Pro yet, let me show you where that is. So in here, you'll just, it'll always ask you to open a notebook. You can just click cancel. So most of the time you'll open a notebook directly from GitHub that we provide to you. But if you want to just get set up for the first time, you'll come over here and you'll click open settings. And then the third one down here is going to be Colab Pro. So if you don't have Colab Pro, you'll click here, and then there'll be like a join or buy or subscribe or something. For me, I've got a cancel subscription. So Colab Pro is charged by the month, so it's $10 a month, and you can cancel pretty easily at any time. But you do get charged basically on a recurring monthly schedule.
Okay.
And that's in the settings button here.
Thanks.
Any other questions about this? I think Leah's going to demo a more like fun notebook, so I can hand it off to her if there aren't any questions.
Derek, you haven't made this one available to us yet. It's not linked in the slides, is it?
It should be in the slides. Yeah, if you open that slide notebook, it should be the cell. There's going to be a. Sorry, let me look here real quick. It should be. Actually, I'll also add this to the chat just so people have it. But it should be on what slide is this? Let me see.
Slide 11.
Slide 11. Yeah, and it's the basics. It's that link that says basics.
So I noticed that you can.
Oh, GitHub Open Collab. Sorry. Yeah.
Sorry, I was just saying. I noticed that you can run several Colab sort of notebooks in parallel. I was wondering, are there any caveats to doing that? Can you just like open up a bunch of notebooks and do things in parallel?
Yeah, so basically what I have seen is the more notebooks you have open, the less likely you are to get a good GPU. So you open one, and if you're on Colab Pro, you'll generally get a V100 pretty much right out the bat. If you open a second one, you might get a V100, but you're more likely to get a P100. The more you open, the more likely you are to sort of get dinged. There's probably some crazy Google algorithm that determines how many hours you've spent using your account and how many GPU hours you're allowed. It is sort of I find that there's like different times a day where it's easier to get a V100 versus a P100. I don't know. There's all sorts of like witchcraft. Like if you like click this button in this way, maybe you get the good one. It's so yes, there is some algorithm where they determine whether or not you deserve a good GPU, and that is a black box sort of deal. And I have seen that some people, if they're not on Colab Pro and you try to abuse their system by opening a bunch of notebooks all at once and trying to run them all, they will kick you off their accounts. I find they're much more flexible with Colab Pro because you're paying them, which is why we recommend doing that.
Cool.
Yeah, and adding on to that, usually you're capped to 3 open active sessions with Colab. So like at most you can have three notebooks running at a given time. If you open a fourth, it'll often ask you to close one of your existing notebooks.
While Leah gets it up here, I'll also add, this is also why I have multiple accounts with Colab Pro. Just for a cost comparison, if you were to rent a V100 on GCP, I believe it's like $2.10 an hour. So in 5 hours, you are basically using up the exact same cost for a monthly. So it's really valuable, and it's why, having 3 Colab Pro accounts you can run at any one time is also still really a good value. So, everyone will have I definitely recommend starting with 1 for this class, but if you find you get like really into it, there are rationales for having multiple accounts that you can open at any one time.
Cool, and yeah, I'll move on to our projection demo. Projection is something that came up in the co-working session. I think H3 asked about it, and also Dakota, you mentioned it at the beginning of class. So yeah, if you just go to the slides and open this notebook, it will be linked here. The first thing I would do is save a copy for myself, but I'll just run this for the sake of the demo today. So yeah, this is a pretty large notebook. It contains a lot of things regarding Stalgan. For the demo today, I'll just be demoing the very first one feature called projection, where, as we described earlier, it allows you to take your own source image and input that into Stallion to get in like a video or an image that is kind of similar to your input image. Yeah, so at the beginning of the notebook, there are some setup cells. So here I'm just pressing Shift Enter to install some libraries and make sure I'm running the right version of TensorFlow. I'm going to press Shift Enter again. And what this is doing is cloning this GitHub repo. If I go here on the side, here you can see the view is sort of the table of contents of this entire notebook. I usually like to keep it on this folder icon, which shows my like all the files I have accessible to me. So as a result of running this cell, this Stalgan2 ADA folder has now appeared because it's now been cloned to our file system. I'm going to press Shift Enter here again. This CD means change directory. So this means I'm now in this directory. These two cells can get a little hairy if you run them out of order or run them multiple times. So yeah, just keep in mind, like, you know, this little number 2 is here and this number 3 is here. So yeah, one thing that you may run into is if you go back and run the cell another time, since you're already in here and you run this again, it'll actually put another one inside of this one, and then you'll have two nested repos, which can get a little hard to manage. So just keep track and keep in mind which cells you've run and how many times you've run them. This next cell is for downloading a pre-trained model. So these are Stallion models that someone else has already trained on a specific data set. And each of these like long string of random numbers and characters corresponds to an ID, specifically of a model stored in Google Drive. But yeah, here's a short little selection that you can choose from to play with. Today we'll be using this model which Derek trained on abstract art. And so you can just copy this string and then put it here to replace it. And this G down is downloading that pickle file or that pre-trained model to our file system. So after running this, it should pop up right here. And it seems like it should be here, but it's not here yet. If you're expecting something to be in your file system, but it's not, there's this little refresh button which refreshes your view. And look, now it's there. What is pickle file? So pickle is it's essentially a format that stores Python objects. So for the purposes of this class, a pickle file is just is a pre-trained model. But pickling in general is just sort of a way of storing data and then reloading it.
You can think of it as a zip file. It's essentially a zip file of data in this case. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And an alternative, if you have your pickle file already stored in your Google Drive, is you could mount your own Google Drive. And then after running this, your Google Drive would show up here. So if you did that, I'm going to just go through this pretty quickly. And after that cell's done running, we'll have a drive folder here, but I'll move on. So this is like where the magic happens in terms of projection. This cell is running a specific script called projector. Here it is outputting the results to this out directory called projection. So what you should expect is when you run the cell, we'll get a folder here called projection. Target, this is your input image. So I'm going to go ahead and upload an image of a cat. And we can see what that cat image looks like if I just double click on it here. This is cat. And here, so I'll go ahead and grab the path to my cat image. So you can click these 3 little dots and then click copy path, and stick that right in here to tell Colab what your input image is. And then here, this should be the path to your pickle file. So let's go to our pickle file and grab this, copy the path and put it here. And now I'll run this. And running this will take a couple minutes because, like Dark mentioned, projection it's kind of a slow process. This might take about 2 or 3 minutes to run. And when it's done, we'll have a folder here that'll say projection. Yeah, and so while it's running, do you guys have any questions?
I have a question. Leo, when you said things might get hairy, what's the best way to like start over? Is it to like change the runtime settings or reload the page or?
My UI is in Spanish, but what I usually do if I just want to like hard reset everything is here, the 5th menu option. There's environment of execution, and then there's restart, and usually I restart the environment of execution and click this.
I think there's one that's called factory reset runtime. That sort of nukes everything and lets you start over from scratch. So if you get really lost, you can always do that. Part of this class is that you will get lost over the next week or two, and it's up to Leah and I to sort of help walk you through things. So I'll say like this week is going to be a little confusing and maybe a little frustrating for folks, and I promise just bear with us and walk through it slowly and show up to a co-working session and we can walk you through things. So I always find the first week of Colab is very frustrating for a lot of people, but I promise you it'll get better.
Cool, and we can see that this is running. It's on step 400 out of 1,000. I guess I can give a quick little primer on what projection is actually doing. So with StyleGAN, StyleGAN is a GAN which generates images that look like images it's been trained on. So there usually isn't a way to like give it an image and have it output an image. It just sort of is a network that just generates images that look like your training data. So what projection is you give it an image and then you tell the network to find the closest image that it can generate that is the most similar to the image of the cat in this particular example. So since we have this network that was trained on abstract art and we're giving it an image of a cat and we're telling it, find the closest abstract art piece that looks like a cat, we'll probably get some weird results. And we'll see them in a little bit. Yeah.
We'll cover a lot more of this in detail in starting next week when we talk about different types of models. But yeah, this is we're like kind of skipping ahead a little bit, but it's just to show you that there's a fun thing you can do with these models.
Right. So it has finished downloading or finished running, and now I can go ahead and download projection.mp4. Let me actually share my entire screen so you can see that. And it's taking a little bit to download.
So while that downloads, why don't we show the homework and just sort of talk about where you can find other notebooks?
Right. Cool. And places you can find other notebooks we have a GitHub repo that is sort of a compilation of a lot of different machine learning collabs. here are a selection of 3 of them that we've looked through and made sure they're documented well, and they're also pretty short notebooks if you just want to get started. If you are a little more familiar with Colab or more comfortable with it, here we've linked 3 different notebooks that are sort of longer, might be more advanced, but we've run through them and documented them well and made sure like you hopefully won't run into any error messages because we've run through them. Yeah. If you are also like more code savvy and feel restricted by this GitHub repository, if you want to go and find Colab notebooks out in the wild, like on the internet, here are some resources. Towards Data Science is a Medium blog that is sort of a compilation and has a lot of articles that describe things step by step, and often will have Colab notebooks linked out. And also you can always, if you're very interested in a particular model, Google that model in Colab Notebook. And no promises about things you find out in the wild on the internet. They'll probably be not the best documented, but if you want to go find more content. So it looks like our projection video is done. It's the moment of truth. So if you input a cat, we're getting some stripes coming out. It's kind of cat-like. You see a little bit of the nose. I ran this yesterday on the Stalgan model that was trained on faces, and this will be a little more scary. But yeah, there we go. We get this weird cat person.
This somehow still looks less scary than that Cats movie that came out a couple years ago. So like, it's still not that scary. So one other note with the Colab GitHub repo. So I would definitely check. I would start, if you are brand new to Colab, I would start with some of the notebooks that Leah has listed. And again, really the point of this week is to just start getting comfortable using the interface. So a lot of times you'll just start at the very top of a notebook and just start like working your way down it. In many cases, so I think linked to here are a lot of demo videos that Leah and I have done to also walk you through how a notebook works. So like, if I don't want to call them training wheels, but if you are really like a little bit hesitant to jump into Colab, start by watching one of these demo videos and pause it and go through every step alongside us. Hopefully that'll get you in a really they'll sort of walk you through how the process works. And again, as you do this more and more, you'll get a little bit more comfortable with it. You'll probably have questions for Leah and I to just sort of what are you doing here? What's going on here? Like, I know a lot of us don't know how to read code, and you're going to be like kind of scared. You're like, what am I running? Like, what is it doing? And I'll just say, like, even for me personally, like, I don't know a lot of like TensorFlow or Torch code. So even I will like sort of gloss over the code and just run the cells and sort of try to like learn by trial and error. So some of this is like getting used to the interface, getting used to just working to trial by error, trying to Google error messages. That's what Lee and I are here for. So if you can attend a co-working session, please do. If you can't, drop a note for either of us in Slack and we will answer your questions there. Again, this week is going to feel a little uncomfortable, but that's good. That's why we're here. We're going to walk you through stuff. I'll also say that on the ML Arts Collabs repo, if you wouldn't mind clicking through there just to show, there are many, many more notebooks and also some demo videos that we're not listing here. Fingers crossed, most of the demo notebooks should work fine. There's a chance that some stuff is out of date. If you hit one of those, let me know and I can try to jump in and fix it really quickly. But there should be like a good amount of stuff for you to find in here and play with. And maybe you'll even find that like, oh, I tried a model in Runway and it's also here in Colab. Let me try that and see what the differences are. You may find that one's easier to use, one's more configurable, other things. So, really this week is just like dig in, start to get comfortable with the interface. And then if you run into errors or other things, come find Leah and I, again, we can help walk you through it. Cool. So that's sort of the homework for this week. So just like you did with Runway, start playing with notebooks, start generating images and video. You may need a little bit of help of downloading images. So again, I think what Leah was showing is you just right click on an image and download it. Sometimes you might not know where the image ended up. That's when you can ask Leah and I, and we can try to point you in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other second piece of homework is, so I just recorded a video today. So we've now gone through some of the more technical side of things. The idea here is like, let's start seeing some cool artwork and let's start thinking about what we might want to make in the future. So this is about a 30-minute video. You can watch it 1.5 speed, although I know I talk fast. But this will show you a bunch of different types of models or like cool pieces of art. It'll also show you some artists that if you're not familiar with, I would definitely recommend checking out their work. In most cases, I've linked out to either their portfolio, a video about them, or other things. So I definitely recommend digging into that and trying to find some cool work. And I'm trying to break this down into categories. The categories are very wishy-washy, but I welcome sort of your opinion on what you think about them and if you have feedback on stuff like that. So next week we'll connect this a little bit to some of the more popular models. So you've probably already seen StyleGAN. I know some people have asked about CycleGAN and those sort of things. So we'll connect what you see here to how people are building those or what models they're using a little bit more next week. And then we'll start to look at examples of those in Colab to actually play with. So I think next week will be a lot of fun. This week will just be like sort of getting over the riding the bike for the first time kind of deal. Yes, you cannot run Colab from your phone. I'm sure that is not going to happen. You might be able to run it from your iPad. I think I've seen people running it from their iPad. Oh, one note that I should have mentioned that we didn't mention is if you're doing a longer process in Colab, you do have to keep that tab open and your notebook open. So if you shut your laptop or you turn off your machine, some things will break. We'll get to that more when we talk about training, but just be aware that like if you like try to come back to it afterward and it's not there, you might lose it. So. All right. Any other questions before we wrap up for the day?
Sorry, I just wanted to ask if I don't know if this is just like Google black box magic stuff, but like sometimes when my Colab gets disconnected, say I move from one place to another with my laptop, for example, and when I start, I open it up again, it reconnects to my previous session. I don't know if there's a policy for that. Like if I had like something going on, like a model being trained or something, it seems to continue in the background and allow you to sort of reconnect to a session. And I don't know what the policy is for that. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it actually disconnects.
Yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get into training. I find you've got about 5 to 10 minutes between shutting a tab and reopening it and having it connect. Sometimes I've had to like restart my computer and I'm always really nervous about it coming back when I reconnect, but you've got a couple minutes. But if you shut it down for more than 5 or 10 minutes, you will just lose you'll lose your connection, which we'll talk about this again a lot more when we talk about training. But that's why you want to use Google Drive where you can to save your work there.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, one question. Can we use a Google Colab with the other IDEs like PyCharm or something?
Probably. I haven't really looked into that too much. I do know there's a way to sync it locally and have some of your changes run. I can find some videos on that, but it's definitely like a definitely like next level kind of thing. But I do think you can do some of that.
Thanks.
So we also have co-working sessions. I think we've got 2 this Friday. Is that right, Leah? Is there one in the afternoon that you're running?
Yeah, I'm running one at, I believe 3 p.m. Central. Or 5 p.m. Central, which is 6 p.m. Eastern.
Cool. Yeah, and I think I'm doing one at 7, and then again, we're doing one on Tuesday. So we'll announce those in the channel, and you'll get invites to them as well. So please use those if you can, and if not, please just drop us a message in Slack, and we'll get back to you pretty quickly. Cool. All right. Well, we will see everybody next week then. Again, let us know if you have questions or get stuck anywhere.
Cool.
Cool.
Thanks, Derek.
Thanks.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Leah.